Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. How was the mahi-mahi?
Woo, yeah.
Wow, that was amazing. That was amazing. But we're not here to talk about fish, here to talk about the vendor maze. I'd like to introduce our panel. So Ron Korinsky joined SGA Dental Partners after serving as the Chief Information Officer of ABI Food Systems, the largest privately held food management company in the United States. As CIO, Ron oversees all aspects of technology development, implementation, and support for SGA. He has over 20 years of IT experience and a diverse background, including retail, services, and insurance, and is a Desert Storm veteran. So welcome. Santosh Patel, president and co-founder of Complete Specialty Solutions, is committed to helping general dentists thrive in today's market. With over 15 years of large-scale operations experience in both the medical and dental industry, Santosh and his team are partnering with DSOs, groups, and solo offices that want to provide patients the level of in-house specialty care they are looking for with services and/or a software solution that allows them to successfully build their own specialty program. So welcome. Awesome. And then Jacob Irving is a growth-minded individual with a passion for identifying and resolving business process bottlenecks through innovative and efficient technology solutions with Nuvia. Since the age of 17, when he started his piano lessons on wheels business, he gained extensive experience working in and with small to medium-sized businesses. His hands-on involvement across various departments has honed his ability to streamline processes and implement lasting solutions, ensuring that reoccurring issues are effectively addressed. So welcome. Awesome. So we have a great conversation and a great panel. I want to start out, Santosh, with you regarding vendor selection. And you know, in your experience, who should be a part of the decision-making process when we're looking at vendor selection?
Yeah, so the way we really think about the decision-making process is really like a marketing funnel, right? So at the very top of that funnel, that's the data gathering phase, right? So that's your CIOs, your CEOs, COs, everyone's really using their network, reading, either articles, listening to podcasts, and understanding who are the vendors that are actually out there. And then you start to really go to who are the end users. And I think that part sometimes is missed. A lot of the decisions are made at the top of the funnel, and then the operational expectations are made at the bottom, right? So our approach is we take the data gathering concept, we create a focus group of the end users, and a lot of that focus group also depends on the competency of that end user. So don't always pick the end user who is someone who's great at their job that you're going to promote in the next 6 months and they're no longer going to be in that job. You want to take the competency level of the expectation of what that role should be, right? Sure. And so when we kind of go through that, that really helps us understand, is something going to be adopted? From that navigation standpoint, I think that's critical. So the data gatherings are all the negotiation, all that will still happen at the leadership level. But in terms of buy-in and really adoption, I think it has to go through to that end user and pulling different individuals in to that concept. Also, one of the things that we shy away from the word pilot. Because sometimes pilot has a negative connotation of, if it doesn't work a little bit, we just pull it out and we're done, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's more of, okay, we're committing to, even if it's just one location, we're committing to doing this at this one location, right? So we'll learn through what the obstacles are, how do we course correct, right? But that's the concept that we've started to move more towards is, we're not gonna pilot it because some groups some team members have been in offices where they don't put their best effort into it, then they don't have to adopt the product, right? And so we kind of want to move that concept away.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is my mic louder than everybody else?
Oh, it's fine. You're good.
The dire.
Yeah, I think that sounds too bad. No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. The only thing I would add on that topic is, when you're picking it's not just about the people, it's also about like this, is this the right clinic to really test this thing out too? Because I think in some cases, we have general practice and we have a lot of specialty, and it's like, is this something, sometimes we have products that are specific to, this is really gonna like be amazing in perio, but we don't know if it's gonna be great in general practice. So sometimes we'll pick different clinics. Picking the right doc, the right office staff. If you don't have a strong office manager, and if you have a doc who is, a little bit more resistant to change, you could tank a product, and we don't shy away from the little pilot. I appreciate the fact that you do, but we use it as a pilot because I think it's, we want to know that this thing has legs. It's gonna grow. It's not just because somebody wanted it. It's going to be because of the results. So establishing those key metrics of like, how are we going to measure this thing ahead of time, making sure you get the right people to give it the best chance that it can have, and knowing that you're going to have to try to implement this with other clinics that have docs that maybe aren't so strong and office managers that aren't as strong.
Jacob, talk to us about, because you mentioned when we connected earlier about, deciding on a decision process and why that's important, because there's so many caveats and things too of how people make decisions, but to talk to us about, how you guys, operate.
Yeah, well, when I came in, we had 85 different softwares across everything, and a lot of them were from marketing because they want to try it, right? So, and I'm not saying that's fully solved, but we're getting better. And so a lot of it comes to, just like you guys are saying, you got to find your A, B, and C players of the offices, but then more importantly, you got to have your control group. Like, this is what it is and has been. And so then we track all those metrics, and we're looking at them daily and weekly to see how it is. But we also commit to, a lot can happen in 1 week, right? We want 3 months. Like, show me how this is actually going to make a lift, and then we won't wait 3 months before we go keep installing it. But if we see something good in 6 weeks, now we're like, okay, let's bring on the second group and let's track that. And then once you know you're good, because especially when you're with marketing, you're dealing with top of the funnel. If you mess that up, it makes a lot of other pain. So we're very strict on that part. And then we have a full adoption team who we bring in after the officers. They're aware of it all before and they give their feedback. But then when it's time to go, like, we lean on them heavily because they're the ones who are going to be working with the different doctor types and office types and stuff in there. So, and we rely on them. Tell me who my A player and C players are here, because they deal with them every
Do
day.
you give them like a rubric for them to kind of navigate through?
We like quadrants.
Yeah.
So we'll figure those out and say this is what we're looking for, and then we'll test our thoughts against our theory and see how it came out. So we're getting much better. We've been doing this for the last 18 months, and now we know our key players. But then, like you said, some will get promoted. Like, no, don't take them away. We need them.
So,
Can I add too?
Yeah,
Like
go ahead.
on that, I think one of the keys that we've done that I think is very helpful is we make sure when we have a new vendor that we're trying out, we assign somebody who kind of owns that vendor internally, and it's not always me. It's not often me. And the reason why we do that is because, at the end of the day, with all the vendors we have, if I'm the main point of contact, some of you in the room can attest to this, like, you can't always get a hold of me. So I can't always be available. So you want to have somebody that's very close to the success of whatever you're testing, be the actual lead. You're, keep yourself as kind of the executive sponsor, but stay involved. I'm not saying don't be involved, but have somebody who's on the ground that's going to be the day-to-day. I think that's been helpful for us too.
One other thing we do with that is, because you have people who can make it up, those who make it real. So you find that person who make it real, and then we also, because we're tracking this, we give them a spiff. Like, if you get this successfully done, then they make a little bit. So you get a long way with
skin in
that.
the game.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, Santos, this question: what factors need to be taken into consideration when looking at, a vendor or even multi-vendor selection? Brian mentioned it too. That there's a lot of factors even behind the scenes that are coming in and disruptive and things. But could you
Yeah, so from factors, I think, and we're a little uniquely positioned in the sense that we're a traveling special DSO, but we're also a vendor in that sense, right? So we see it a little bit from both sides. The API is always a concept of, the importance on how do these systems talk to each other. And really what it comes down to is how do we just make it easier for the end user, right? Like that's why we want APIs, because we want to make it easier for the end user. So taking the steps of really documenting one, is there an API integration in place? Is it making it easier for the user? Is it almost making it error-proof for the user as well? I think that's also critically important, right? Because nobody wants to hear anymore, it's just one more click, or just open this one more page, right? Because I think at that point, everyone's tired of hearing that. But do we also then have a system of, like a support system in place, right? So what's the roadmap, what's the training for the team that's now going to get on board? And I think that's an important aspect. The product can be great.
Sure.
But if the adoption and the system training is terrible, it will always fail. Right? And so I think when we look at different vendors to partner with, we want to know their reputation. We want to, and it's okay if they had some churn, but we're not concerned about churn. We're concerned about, they stub their toe, how do they bounce back?
Sure.
Right? And so I think that part's important when we look at different vendors. We have a rubrics as well. Does it check our box on APIs? Does it check our box on different, specialties and how we integrate?
Yeah, I can jump in on that too. I think I'll take a different tack. I 100% agree with what he was saying, but also I think it's important to kind of think about the landscape of the vendors we're dealing with, right? I mean, so what we have is the market share of PMS that we're all dealing with for most of us, not you, not Jacob, but everybody else is dealing with this. The landscape is, honestly, we're dental up until maybe 15, 20 years ago has been predominantly small business. And from a technology perspective, you can kind of feel that very palpably, right? And every technology that you look at that's kind of out there, it's like, big business gets Oracle, right? And small business gets QuickBooks. And, a lot of the PMS systems that have market share today are QuickBooks. They were designed a long time ago. Their businesses have run as a cash cow model. And so the investment hasn't been there, and it's kind of been, what are you going to do, right? And I think understanding that, like when we go out and we find vendors, we're picking vendors that are small vendors, right? They're basically trying to, in essence, finish the product that hasn't been finished before. So you're ending with this awkward mesh of vendors, and each one of them, if you think about how that even occurs, what's in it for them, right? I mean, because they're all, most of these are, private equity or venture capital funded. They have their own goals. And so you end up things like sometimes super awkward conversations where I had one that was insisting we don't do pilots. It's like we want to sign an enterprise agreement. Well, don't worry, we'll give you 30 days to cancel. And I was just sitting there saying eventually I walked away from that and just said, we're not going to do it because our business models are too far apart. I mean, you want an arranged marriage and I want Tinder. We're just never gonna.
I like that better than pilot.
Tinder is the data filters. Tinder is the worst pilot. But no, I think having this. Understanding what motivates your vendor, understanding what their triggers are, because sometimes you can get around it and sometimes you can't. So what motivates them now and what's going to motivate them in the future is actually your success. And so I think a part of it too is, one thing I'll add in here, because I don't know where else to maybe stick this in the presentation, but the word, if any vendor uses the phrase it's on our roadmap, right? It's a huge beware sign for everybody, because it basically isn't there now, right? And so if it's important, if it's critical for you, and but you have this kind of promise from this really charismatic salesperson that says it's coming, I give you the same advice that I give my daughters, who are now both adults in a dating age. It's don't date someone you have to fix. If it's not what you want now, it's probably not going to be what you want later. So beware of the roadmap.
Yeah, spot on. I think also, Jacob, if you want to comment on this, it's more building the strategy. What problems are you trying to solve? And if you are selecting a vendor, will that vendor be able to provide a solution that you could reduce, maybe 2 vendors you're currently working with to bring that, but could you elaborate?
Yeah, so vendor choice is very important here. I'm with you. Have to have an API or I don't talk to.
Yeah.
Also, we don't call them pilots, we call them split testing.
Yeah.
And so everyone knows that they're part of split test. But I feel like I can bring the vendors along. I've been doing this for a while and they're hard to bring along. So I've just decided to make my own PMS. And so my team is in control of this. And so they'll bring, and they can't just give me like soft stuff, like the big ones out there who make you pay for different levels, like give it all to me or I'm not talking. And one of our requirements is we're not gonna do a 14-day trial. Like the way we test it is if they'll do that, then we'll extend it on them on purpose for up to 60 days. Like if you're not gonna give me 60, 90 days to see if this has legs, and really see, because I got a lot of other irons in the fire for everything else, right? So they gotta give me time to get this going. So, but yeah, our business process, I mean, I've been in children Medicaid, I've been in oral surgery, we're all on 4 now. Very different, so I've seen the gamut of it, and you just gotta be able to control it yourself. The DSOs, we all have our own unique flavor, and so you've got to have a vendor who will let you operate how you need to operate, and not you try to say, oh, I can use 10% of your product, but then you have all this other stuff and coming into your environment, and then it's opening you up for risk with everywhere else. So I like to control everything. I guess my wife thinks I have control issues too, maybe, but it works here. So.
This panel is great. I mean, we all have the mahi-mahi, I'm telling you. Tender control is just like, yeah, we're having a good time. But question for Santosh. Okay, we found our vendors, we like it, we got that strategy, we're good, but when is it time to sign, or maybe not sign, exclusives? Ron, you mentioned that, but.
Exclusivities.
Exclusivities, yeah.
So I'm not a fan of exclusivity. I think that kind of locks you in and limits you. Now, I think there is some exclusivity. If you go down the path, it really opens up the conversation out for negotiation, right? So the negotiation on price or other terms. On the vendor side, I can see the value that exclusivity brings because you're also pouring in a lot of energy. I mean, so the vendors are they're not profitable day one from the relationship, right? They're profitable maybe 2, 3, 6 months in to that relationship. And so I can see the exclusivity side because again, they're putting energy into it. But I just have never felt that exclusivity, if the product solves my problem in a way that it needs to solve my problem, I don't need exclusivity. Right? So there has to be some inherent risk on the vendor as well to continuously have maybe not roadmap, but innovation through their product that they're going to hook me in to continue to serve my needs.
Okay.
I think your point, that's a good point. Like they have their own roadmap, that's them. I'm all in if they got skin in the game.
Yep.
Earn my business every month. Like we don't sign long contracts. We're working with, we have 4 phone vendors. And we're killing one because they wanted a big 5-year contract, but we have others who are like, yeah, month to month, and we'll prove it. Those are the ones where they show value out of the box first. Then I know I'll give my money and my commitment and my time and my energy to them because they're already showing.
And vendors can fire us, right? It goes both ways. They have to prove it to us, but we also have to prove it to them.
Yep.
We're not using their product and we're complaining about different things, and they have the right to term us.
I've said to vendors that have asked for exclusivity, it's, your ask of that makes me think I should, that you're not confident in your product, maybe I shouldn't be either. So if somebody really feels like I need you to, make sure you're not gonna, I mean, we sound like hippies, right? We're gonna see we have an open relationship, right? So I wanna be able to, exclusivity means you can't even hide. So we really are just playing this dating. It wasn't intentional.
I feel like we're the bachelor, he's trying to figure out if it's good or not.
But Santosh was gonna be the problem.
The control issue. But no, I think the exclusivity thing is you always need to be, I'm a strong believer, we always have to have them out. And actually, I'm not a fan of 3-year deals. I'm not a fan of long-term commitments, even if it's not exclusive, because the idea of getting into a deal where it's the next best thing could come out tomorrow, and maybe I maybe I want to try that, and now you're locked into dealing with that. So on rare occasion, I would consider it, but for the most part, I won't do more than a year. I always have them in out too, because by the way, if you have, when you're entering into a vendor relationship, if you don't have, it's kind of like legal 101 stuff that, I'm not an attorney like Patrick is, but I feel like I am sometimes with contracts. If you care about it, and it's a service level you care about, it needs to be on the contract. Because if you don't have an out, when they fall down and can't get back up, it's on you, and you're gonna have to either pay for nothing or or make a hard switch.
So, we're in the dating game, and we found our vendors, we're in love, we commit, and now it's the ongoing relationship. And how do we manage that? What are the best practices on when things go, not if, but when things go awry, bumps and hiccups and roadblocks and things that maybe were on the roadmap that now have been delayed, and you made decisions based on what was on there. Talk to us through on how you would manage that, or how we should manage that with our new vendor relationships.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'll put the hat on of a vendor kind of perspective. And we did this, and we fumbled several times at the very beginning when we first started the business on the software side. We did not effectively communicate from our sales to our activation and account executive team. I mean, we failed that part, right? So everyone gets excited about the sale, no one communicates what we promised. We get into the practices, and we immediately lose trust.
Yeah.
Immediately. Well, no, that's not what he said. You guys are trying to pull one over on us. I'm like, no, we're not. We just didn't talk, right? So now we actually have a handoff document that goes from sales to our support team that is also emailed to the client. So we verify with the client on there, say, hey, just we know we have our signed contract. We also want to make sure nothing was said via phone or text or something else. Is this document correct? And that creates that level of trust again, because we're all going to stub our toe, right? But again, how do we bounce back? So I think that's one of the most important pieces is when you go from sales to support, are we clearly defining what the expectations are, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then at that point, it's a checklist. And then that checklist, that's where it's easier to kind of execute on.
Okay.
Yeah. My experience there has been the priorities change so frequently that what was talked about and sold and what we're actually needing to do, it's like waterfall versus agile. We make a checklist and it's dead like within a minute, right? So what we found is that with our key vendors, so MSP, security, X-rays, and then some of these other ones are integrating, for going from dating to marriage, like me and my wife have 8 kids, and we're like, running a family like that is like running a business. And so she and I, the most important meeting we have every week is our executive meeting on Monday nights, where we talk about the issues. She tells me what's going on with the kids and what I miss and what we're doing all. And so we do the same thing with our vendors. So every week we call it our correlation meeting. Come together and we give each of them 5-10 minutes, tell us what are you doing well, what are we doing well, what are you doing wrong, what are we doing wrong. Like, transparency has to be there, because we have our accountability chart, and I've got, like you said, team members who are in charge of different parts, but our vendors aren't just a dash line, and they're part of our team. Like, they're the success. My team looks good or bad based off what my vendors do, right? Because I'm putting my trust out there. So every week they have key metrics they're showing up to talk about, like, hey, we know we're gonna step shelves, we know panels go down, but our vendor knows, like, hey, we want a response within 15 minutes and people on site within 1 day, and they report on that. So when you have those conversations, you can also then pivot the priorities, and now they're aware. And so now it's not this vendor on the outside going, I'm trying to read the room and figure this out. They know what's going on. And they can say, actually, we've seen this in some other places. Here's something that could help you. So they're just an extension of the team.
So first of all, I think, Jacob, you have a distinct advantage managing vendors if you can manage your kids. I don't know how you do that. So
My wife.
with full head of hair. With full head of hair. But no, I think the one thing I would add, and I agree with that. I think the one thing I would add is you need to follow the contract. It sounds like simple, straightforward advice, but the thing that gets people in trouble more if you find yourself in a really bad vendor relationship and you never know if you're gonna, in the very beginning, everybody seems great and, but if you find yourself in a bad relationship, you need to follow the contract. So having that contract laid out of what's gonna happen when is really important. However, there are some states that if you have a defined consequence for low performance and you don't execute it within a certain number of tries, I think in the state of Ohio it was 3, then that part of the contract is no longer enforceable. So it's not just like, hey, you should really just follow the contract. Like, you really need to follow the contract or it might not work anymore. So you might lose your ability to exercise it.
I'll add to that. Again, from a vendor lens standpoint, when we were working with the client, we actually started to put in our agreements where we have fixed meetings with our client, right? And now that's translated when we work with the vendor from a DSO perspective. When we work with the vendor, we actually are demanding those fixed meetings as well to keep us honest, right? Because again, I think sometimes we see it as it's a one-sided kind of partnership there, where the vendors want these meetings. They don't want these meetings constantly moved, rescheduled. Oh, this person can't attend. Well, no pilot, no split test, nothing is going to be successful if we can't have that open communication on what the failures are, what's going to be successful, and even sharing best practices, right? Well, we know that this client has been with us for 4 years, and this is why they've been successful. We need to have the opportunity to talk through that with the groups on a consistent manner. So I think that's also important, is to not just have the expectation of the vendor, but also have that expectation of yourself to say, we're going to commit this number of touch points throughout this journey.
Sure. Yeah, because I think, again, just to interject, the importance is when you're going through those split tests or pilots too, is that feedback. But it goes both ways. So when it does come time to say, okay, we're ready to move, we're good, we're on an ongoing relationship, now it's the adoption of the product. And I know you touched on it initially, but Ron, I want to hear from you on SGA side on those practices, those partners adopting that new technology or maybe that new initiative, and maybe give us an awareness of, hey, these could be some roadblocks or maybe some signals that things are going maybe in the right way or in maybe not a good way.
Yeah, I think, by the way, a lot of this comes back to having very fluid, to just to reemphasize Sam Fisher's point, the really fluid conversations with your vendors, things are happening. If it's a good vendor relationship, if you feel like you can't talk to your vendors, you probably shouldn't have done that deal. But having the right people in the right place, that you have that kind of like this project leadership and the early adopters, making sure that they, first of all, you have to really well define what success is. What were you trying to do with this product? What KPIs are you trying to affect, right? Because any business that's not running on APIs is kind of running on autopilot, or KPIs is just running on autopilot. So I think if we're doing this, usually an idea for a vendor comes from a need or a conversation. And the best things we've done at SGA have come from conversations that I've had with like our COO or my CEO or some of the operational leadership, like what's really bothering you, what's really happening here. And it starts with a problem to solve. And it starts with a metric that we feel like we can improve and the value of what that is. That becomes your measurement in the project. And that needs to also be communicated when you're, I think somebody was talking earlier about, how do you really get adoption when you have to tell them what the value proposition is, right? The value proposition at the micro level, why are we getting this vendor? We want to impact case acceptance. We want to impact, whatever it is, or improve call rates, or whatever the solution is that you're looking to find. We want to collect more. So we've had a lot of cases where the people really like the tool and it didn't move the metrics at all. So we talk about that with the vendor, like, hey, I thought we were going to get, you set my expectation that we would have a 15% improvement, and we've had, rounding up 0%. And so, this is just the cost at this point. And even if the people like the tool, if it's not moving the needle on the KPI, we walk away.
Yeah. So we started to pay our end users that are in our focus group a stipend. I think you mentioned like a SPIF as well, because it just works, right? I mean, I think they are then your champion to other practices and groups and team members on who's using it, why they're using it. And then they're just more inclined to adopt different technology and different ways of solving problems.
If you have that spiff, then you find like, you have a great care coordinator, and she just really adopted it, like, this is calendaring, but it's hard for everyone else. And so we then flew her around to do that. So she felt just amazing. She had put in 4 months with us of try this both systems. Like, she was doing a lot of work, so gotta find ways to reward them.
It pays for itself once it's accelerated, right?
Yep.
The adoption is accelerated.
That's the whole value of the DSO, right?
Yep.
You find the best way, invest the money to get the right way, and then replicate it.
Yep.
Yeah, find your cheerleaders, right? The ones that would be quiet or the ones that would be, especially the ones that would be loud during this whole transition, for sure. So that's great. I love the idea and the concept too of, spiffing them out or, paying them. That's great. Next question, future trends. Talking about what's coming down the pipeline, what are you guys excited about? What emerging trends do you guys see in vendor management and DSOs? What excites you about what we see on the horizon? We'll start with you, Santosh.
I think the concept of what ChatGPT as a whole can do for, you layer that on top of like a practice management system.
Yeah.
And then now I can just ask a question and start to have either graphical analysis or just, very pointed questions answered. And then giving that autonomy back to your clinicians as well, right? So instead of them playing the game of, I gotta ask, accounting, and I gotta ask this person, just give them obviously some limited access, but access so they can answer their own questions on their productivity, the compensation, things like that. Had a great conversation with TrueLark yesterday about kind of what they're doing. I was a little bit more ignorant on kind of their solution and what they're really solving. But leveraging where AI is taking it to the next level, I think is phenomenal. And I think dentistry, the trend of dentistry is going to be very similar to hospitality, right? Where more and more is going remote, book online, obviously. But when you walk into a dental office, in my opinion, in 10 years, you're not going to have a front desk. You can go straight to the back to see a chair and a clinician. Very similar to like One Medical and some concierge medical practices, where, and we all see it now, less and less people want to talk to people, right? So if they can on their phone, just like when we check into a hotel, you have a mobile key, you don't even talk to the receptionist, you go straight to your room, you unlock your room, right? I think you're gonna see that as a future trend in dentistry, and we have to adapt to what consumers want, not just in dentistry, but this is what consumers want.
Sure.
I've never had a mobile key work for me. Maybe we'll
Go to Marriott.
That's who doesn't. I think that's where dentistry is going. I think with DSOs, because this is where it's all moving to. I think fractional is something that we really need to be looking at. Like, consider your vendors as your team, right? And then if they've got good stuff, a lot of times our teams are so understaffed that we can't do all these things. So don't be afraid to bring them in for 6, 12, 18 months, whatever it's needed to get it there. If it's got the lift and the ROI, then rely on them for that. Because that is where the accountability and the communication actually happens. It's skin in the game. And so it shows I'm willing to pay, you're willing to show up and get that there. So I'm really seeing a lot more of that going on, because then you can augment your team and go further, faster together.
Okay. As far as things on the horizon, I think we're really excited about. I mean, I got to admit, I was just saying at lunch to Jacob how jealous I am. He's building his own PMS. He's going to have ultimate control and be able to differentiate. It's something that I feel in our industry, because I've not been in the industry for long, that I'm really missing, is the ability to create value. We have a lot of great partnerships. We do a lot of helping to guide product with the partners that we do have. I feel really good about that. I'm happy to do it. But I know that at the end of that product, I've just spent my own time and energy and given my competitors something for free. So this level playing field is interesting. I think, we are looking to go to an enterprise PMS solution. I'm not sure if I should say what it is, because the decision's not made yet, but let's say they believe they have the best PMS on the planet, and they're here. So, one of the things I'm looking forward to in that model is, with their API model, being able to add do custom code against the thing and extend the thing in a way that is creating competitive advantage for just us. That, I hate to be selfish, but that's what business is. And, instead of just continuing to do that. We're very excited about diagnostic AI. I think we took a swing at it a few years ago. We didn't get the adoption we wanted. We're back looking hard at it again. And we're very excited about the idea of diagnostic AI, predominantly for two reasons. I think there's a bigger play in the hygiene space than I think we initially kind of thought. And the other thing is that new docs coming out are not only expecting it, but they're, we don't, the SGA's business model, we don't buy practices where the nose of the plane is directed at the ground and we try to pull it up right at the end. Like we only deal with blue chip docs. And so the adoption rate of somebody like, hey, we're gonna get this technology that's gonna tell you whenever you're wrong, doesn't seem to play well, right?
Doctors love to hear that.
They love that, yeah, they're all super interested in it. There's very few that actually like it. But I think we're excited about the notion of diagnostic AI on the horizon. And, if you were at Dykema, you heard me speak a little bit about our relationship, somebody did, our relationship with TrueLark. I'll probably get in trouble for it. I hope I'm not saying too much about it. But one of the things I'm excited about is the notion, I think you guys said it out loud at the last conference, I'm allowed to say it here. But they're really trying to play beyond just the kind of AI chatbot, scheduling and handling all the kind of blocking and tackling questions that they have, getting into trying to get in front of the insurance piece and try to make sure that we can make sure that we collect the right amount of the window. Collecting too much is a problem, collecting too little is a problem. So they're just different problems. So, and I'm very excited about things like that it's not, just TrueLark doing that. There's a lot of places in the industry that are really focused on that. But I think anytime you can get a tool that already does something really well, that can then help you solve problems that are really important. And I think probably one point I'll make, and I'll shut up, is the one of the things that you need to look at, and we were just talking about this at lunch too, is that if you're looking at your vendor and they don't have a strong operator who has the majority of influence over the product, it's kind of a red flag. Because all these vendors are creating dental operations products, and they don't, I had a conversation with a CEO, I won't say who that was, but I had a conversation with the CEO recently. I was like, I was trying to give him this advice, and I'm like, you guys are always at best 3 degrees off of what I want. Sometimes 20. And unless you hit it dead on, it's not actually useful. So, making sure you have that, they have that operational guidance, and I no longer accept the answer of, well, that's why we have relationships with people like you, partners like you. And it's like, well, I'm not on your product team, and I've told you 3 things in the last year and you haven't done them, so that doesn't count. You need somebody with a voice. It's almost becoming a barrier for me if I can't sense strong product knowledge, strong operational knowledge in a vendor. I've become disinterested.
Well, thank you, Ron, Jacob, and Santos for an awesome conversation. And again, we just encourage you, if you have questions, grab one of these guys, pull them aside, continue to work your strategy, understand what your problems are, and find those vendors that will solve your problems and reduce the count of 85 vendors down to a little bit more. So
32.
The 32 now. Yes, things can happen. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.